Today, I have the absolute privilege of introducing you to someone who has profoundly impacted the way I think about career, family, and what it means to make a life that truly works for you. Cheryl Procter-Rogers is a PR and business strategist, an executive coach, and most importantly, someone who embodies wisdom, resourcefulness, and joy in everything she does. She's built a thriving career while raising her daughters, often as a single parent. And the way she speaks about integrating work and family is unlike anyone or anything I'd heard yet. Our conversation today is about career, community, and the mindset shifts that make all the difference. So let's dive in. I'm your host, Katherine Jelinek, and this is the Expanders Podcast, presented by The Skinny Platform, the place for entrepreneurs with something to share and who want to be heard. Welcome, everyone. I am so excited today to get to introduce you to Cheryl Procter-Rogers. So Cheryl is one of the reasons that this podcast even exists, because when I had a conversation with you, Cheryl, sometime in 2024, when you were sharing just from your heart about your years of raising your daughters, and you were raising them for many years as a single parent, and also living and being the beautiful PR and business strategist that you are. And presently, Cheryl is PR and business strategist and executive coach. And how you shared about loving your work and loving your family impacted me. It was very different than how I feel other people speak about it or how I've heard about it. And I just wanted to make sure we had this conversation because it blew my mind at the time. And it was your energy and way of being that really did that. So welcome, Cheryl. Thank you so much for being here.
Catherine, it is my pleasure. And I'm excited to have this conversation about careers, family, the joke about work-life balance.
Yeah.
All
it's
of
not
that.
Real. Cool. Okay, guide me, Cheryl. My first question is about your mindset. How do you see this? Because I feel like when we talk about family and work, we're automatically setting it up like a teeter-totter, where it's like, oh, one takes and one gets. But how have you seen it? How did you see it when you were in the early years? How do you see it now?
Well, certainly I had a really strong village of individuals that really were there to support me and guide me. I think for me, it was really being clear on what I wanted my life to look like. And I wanted it to have all of these parts, and knowing also that there would be times when I wouldn't get it right and I might find myself not having self compassion, but that's when I would lean on my personal cabinet, my village, to get me through those rough patches. It was always clear to me, Catherine, that in order for me to be whole, I needed to have my career and I needed to find a way to integrate my career into my personal life so that the sacrifices that I would make would be mine alone.
Mm, yeah. That there's a voice inside me that's like, oh, if only, So tell me how.
Well, I think it's important to first be clear on what you want and to ask for what you want. And Catherine, even asking the universe or leaning on your faith, whatever that is, to say, okay, I need to call on the ancestors.
really show up.
Everybody, because I want to create this career that really utilizes all of my talents. Was a writer, very creative, loved to plan, loved to organize, had a sense of style as it related to how I wanted to show up, not only personally, but professionally. And so having those mentors and peer mentors early in my career, in my 20s, to help me carve out what that would look like. And I say again, when you ask the universe, things come to you. I just totally believe that. I believe in the law of attraction.
Mm,
And what I knew for sure was I spent a lot of my childhood being an entrepreneur.
really?
Yes. So
Okay.
I had um, a a business altering clothes. My grandmother was a seamstress, and she taught me how to hem and how to take things in. And of course, um, I was making clothes, but I never had the courage to make clothes for others. I only made them for
Mm,
myself. And she believed that during the summer I could learn the craft. And then when I went back home to Chicago, because I was spending the summers with her in Arkansas, that I could come back and make a little money.
okay.
And I do recall when I really got the bug, Catherine, was I put together this little cryptic flyer and went to all of the neighbors, and they gave me, I know for sure they gave me clothes that they would have probably given to the Goodwill. But they're like, oh, isn't she cute? She's like 7, 8 years old, and she wants to, have this
Yeah.
little tailoring business. And so I would, do everything my grandmother taught me, and when I would return the items, they were shocked. And then they started giving me really, things that they
That's
really
awesome.
valued. And so, what I learned from my grandmother and from my own experience is that stepping out and embracing your talents brings you joy. I didn't know, I was a kid, I didn't know to characterize it that way. And so when I had my candle making business, and I was one of those serial entrepreneurs as a kid. So I took that same mentality into my personal life as I started to mature and grow into an adult. And one of the things that I think was really useful that my grandmother taught me, and my parents as well, is being resourceful. And I do believe that many of us, whether we're single parents, or sometimes I say sometimes people are single parents because the other parent has a very demanding job, and they're just not able to be there as much as they'd like. But that, how do you really lean on the resources that are available to you so that you can have a career, create some magic in your home, and have deep relationships with friends and family? And so when we start thinking about, oh my gosh, I could never really do all of this, of course you can't. That's why it's important, I believe, to have a mindset that's full of self compassion And that also creates an opportunity for you to lean into your talents and and be resourceful as you really take an audit of the world that's around you.
Mm,
And so, Catherine, I'm gonna stop there and see.
yeah.
Do you have
I
any?
have a lot of questions. Yes, I
Okay.
do. So I want to underscore something I love first is your recognition. It sounds like at a very early age, the great wonder and usefulness of your joy, of being enjoying things and realizing the value of that. So wow, that's cool. That's important and so wonderful that you had those early experiences of getting to see value that you could create and enjoying the process. That's wonderful. Then to backing up a little bit to what you said, where if you say, even just out loud to the universe or in your own heart and mind, what you want, you'll be surprised. So the first person you really need to be honest with yourself about what you want is yourself. And then being able to share that. What what did you want? Especially in those earlier years when motherhood and the combo and everything was a little newer still. What did you recognize that you wanted?
I really wanted to bring my whole self to everything that I did. And I found a way. It wasn't intentional at the time, Catherine, but those who are listening to this podcast, it's never too late to really think about who you are, faults and all, to be clear about what you want your life to look like. I wanted to be creative. So I was attracted to and landed my first really professional role in a public relations department. And I got into that public relations department with my writing. I was a pretty good writer. And then um, having the right boss
Hmm.
in my
Mentors.
20s, I didn't know anything about picking a boss. I was picking
Sure.
a job, right? But what was the fortunate thing for me was I picked a boss unintentionally that created this entrepreneurial role for me within this national insurance company. If you had said to me, so Cheryl, you should find a role that utilizes all of your talents and skills, I would have said, okay, yeah, but I need to pay my rent. I'm in Los Angeles.
Hmm.
I need a car. So that sounds all really, really good, but is it practical? And I would share with you, I had the right boss, and that boss taught me how to manage other bosses later in my life because he acknowledged my talents and nurtured them. He allowed me to take um, professional development workshops, to attend conferences, to become a member of professional organizations. And so when you start your career that way, it becomes a baseline.
Yeah, I see that.
And so I had this desire to play.
Hmm. Play. You are saying play. I mean, that is incredible for your generation. This is who you are. I can sense it. But that's just like, yes.
I had this role. I had this boss, William Pajo. I will never forget. He was an amazing watercolorist. and he was the vice president of public relations for Golden State Mutual Life Insurance Company.
Hmm.
And he hired me as a writer. And I was writing annual reports and newsletters and doing all of these things. And he let me take a photography class. I had taken a photography class in, my undergraduate work as a part of the journalism program. But I thought, wow, not only did he allow me to take the course, he bought a camera for me.
Oh, I love it.
And so then I took the course and learned how to develop pictures. And so, oh my gosh, Catherine, if the landlord knew I was developing pictures and
Sure. Like the old fashioned way.
I was playing. And so I didn't have any children. I wasn't married yet. And so then I would look around and I was curious, being open to learning new things, seeking those out, but being in the right environment where that's being nurtured. And I was very fortunate.
This, you are saying that it's like that was an impression that stayed. Upon
Yes.
having that experience, it's like, this is now a requirement.
Yes.
Getting to play and be curious and be supported in growth. That's so, wow. How fun, how cool.
And so, do you see how it becomes important in your relationships? It doesn't matter whether it's a friendship or a coworker or a spouse. So now this becomes the baseline. I also had a boss that once I did get married and start having children, he was very supportive of and understanding when I needed to do something for my family. And, those are the boxes that you start to check. Oh, okay. And so then when the opportunity came for me to start my own firm, it was because of everything that the marketing managers at Coca-Cola and Anheuser-Busch had seen. And I had started to partner with those organizations. Catherine, we didn't have a big budget. So I
Hmm.
started doing things creatively for the marketing department because they seem to have all the money. And so when I ran out of money there, I started doing external partnerships with organizations like McDonald's, Coca-Cola, Anheuser-Busch. And so do you see the pattern?
Sounds like you're just playing from one thing to the next, if I'm guessing.
Yes. And being open and curious.
Hmm.
And and so for me, when I think about what's the most important mindset to have to be successful is to be open for any opportunities. And I think of individuals who remained with a company or stayed in a profession that they didn't really love, and they're sacrificing that joy. Because when I think of the 40 plus years I have been in public relations and business strategy and now executive coaching, there's not one day that I get up and dread, right? Doing what it is I love. I'm also thinking back to when I start having children. And I remember my college roommate, I didn't even remember this, Catherine. She said she had talked to me shortly after I had my first child, my Isha, and she said, I said to her, girl, you gotta have babies. This is wonderful. This is the best. And she said, she just kept thinking, what is she doing? That's and it was
Hmm.
just that curiosity finding joy in every moment.
So, Cheryl, something that's striking me, you're open to what might come. So, what's going through my mind is that means you don't necessarily have this stamped out, this has to be the way it is thing going on in your head. Maybe. That's my question.
Yeah.
Because I notice that those who are open to things coming through their door aren't like, this is my only door and I built it and it has to be this way. That there's suffering that can be caused when, and also closedness. It reminds me of I think it's a Joseph Campbell quote on something about being open to the life that could be yours rather than the life you think you have to have. I can find that
Oh
later.
my gosh, yes. Now, Catherine, I will say this. I
Hmm.
am a planner.
Yes. Well, and you talk about like, oh, you got to think about what you want. So, what's the combination between the two of your intentions and plans and the openness and the curiosity to what just comes?
So, public relations was a gateway to a playground because there's this umbrella, public relations, and under that umbrella, there's so many different disciplines: public affairs, special events, media relations, internal employee communications. And I had a serious conversation with my mentor, Chester Berger, and we came up with a list of everything that we felt was best suited for my personality under this umbrella. And we did that, we created that list. So that was a plan. Now, how I was going to do investor relations, I didn't know yet. How I was going to do more employee communications, I didn't know yet. But I knew that these are the things that I wanted to do. And the reason I wanted to do them was because they really played to my strengths, my talents, and just my curiosity.
Okay. So, I'm hearing you're clear on your intentions and your desires, and then the how fills in. Or it's like a relationship with life that you see it, you move.
Yeah. And so then that would probably explain for anyone who's listening why I suspended my consulting practice on 4 occasions
Okay.
to go into an organization. And the first was Nielsen Marketing Research. And my my consulting practice was doing very well. I had Anheuser-Busch, Coca-Cola, Nissan, Kodak. I had some really great clients, and I was
That's
doing,
rock star. That's
yes,
wonderful.
resourcefulness, having that personal cabinet and being part of a larger community helped me accelerate my visibility and my opportunities. And so when a recruiter called and said, there's an opportunity in Chicago, I was still in Los Angeles at the time. I had recently divorced, and I had really kind of said to the universe, I think I want to move back to Chicago
Wow.
and be closer to the values that are important to me. Because
Mm.
I just, I was born and raised in Chicago. So it was very hard to make that switch. And so the recruiter talked about there were 2 opportunities at the company. And would I consider, um, taking a look? And I said, so where is this opportunity? And when he said Chicago, I laughed. I hung up on this person. Because I thought this was a prank by one of my friends that I had.
That is so funny.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Said to him, Ken Carter, and if he's listening, oh my gosh. So Ken Carr, he said, so what are you going to do? I said, well, I'm going to go back. I said, some of my clients will come with me. I said, but I'm still young. I would really like the opportunity to work for like a major organization and learn. I said, when you have your own firm, I'm like the smartest person, right? No.
No, but it's like that's what you have is your
Yes,
brain. And
yes.
yes, you don't
No,
have everything else around you to glum and,
absolutely.
glean from.
Nobody's approving professional development and they're paying for it,
Right.
right?
Right. It's entrepreneurship, baby. Learning on the job.
Exactly. And I said, oh, and wouldn't it be nice if I could end up back in Chicago? So when the recruiter called like 2 days later, I thought it was a prank.
So
And
did you call him back or what happened?
I called Ken and I was like, why would that's not funny. Like, what?
Okay.
He said, no, Cheryl, that was a real recruit. That's a real job. And so when I thought about the opportunity to answer the call, remember I put it out there. I
You did.
really, I really want to be in an environment where I can work and grow and utilize my talents. And so this was an opportunity to create a public relations department for Nielsen Marketing Research that at the time was owned by Dun
Wow.
and Bradstreet.
So
So
cool.
I was like, yes. I said, but you got to help me. I got to sell off some of my business and close out some of my accounts. And they were like, no problem. So, Catherine, again, curiosity, being open. See, this was the plan. The plan is always, for me, was to really improve and grow as a public relations professional. And there were no guardrails up about how that was going to happen, how I was going to get, because at this point, I still hadn't done investor relations and that was still on the list. So when I joined Nielsen to create that PR department and I got a little insight on the fact that Dun and Bradstreet was handling all of the investor relations work, I just raised my hand and volunteered.
Some.
Do you see it? So yes, that's the plan. It was on the list. Had it not been on the list, would I have volunteered? Probably not. But having a plan and thinking through what it is you want. I wanted to be a generalist. I wanted to lean into what excites me, variety, and have enough deep experience in something that I have credibility. And so doing this work alongside the experts in investor relations at Dun and Bradstreet, it was just, it was a gift that I kept unwrapping and using constantly um, from that point forward.
I
And it,
love
and
that.
it, I had HBO as a client, and the vice president of communications made me an offer. Would you consider coming into this regional position? And this was at a time where HBO was launching Sex in the City, Sopranos. And so there were individuals in the industry, Catherine, that said to me, sometimes to my face, sometimes behind my back, and it would get back to me, what's wrong with her? Why would she take a regional position as a manager? That's almost a demotion. Well, what they didn't understand was I was going to have the opportunity to work in a sector I had not. I had only been around the edges of entertainment.
Mm.
And here I was going to be able to be immersed in this new sector. I was going to be able to learn more about talent relations and how to work within a highly matrix organization. And so my girls were young.
Mm.
And this was the time I felt I wanted to have more autonomy. And this was a role, again, entrepreneurial.
Mm.
Here's your region, here's your budget. You
Awesome.
do what you believe is best for HBO and for the region and the partners. So again, I'm able to tap into my creativity. I'm not in a box. And because I have autonomy, I can schedule things around the girls' schedule.
So tell me now, like, let's weave in. I want to hear because I remember being so impacted by this. The standards and intentionality you had around family and the girls and the rituals and routines you had together.
Hmm. And so, again, remember, I'm a planner. So I love to
Hmm.
plan and I love to party. And I
I love
love
that about you.
and I love to have fun. And so for me, it was important that I could bring the girls into my work. So at Golden State, um, when I was there, I could bring my Isha to events. I could have her experience my world. And then, of course, it's helping her to be open to how she will create her own world when she's, an adult. And so when you start to think about the boundaries, I remember, oh my gosh, it was a very dear friend of mine, Karen, and Karen Lee. And there was some Star Wars toy that her son wanted for Christmas. And we looked all over for that toy and couldn't find it. And I think finally she found someone knew she was looking for it and found it and grabbed it for her. And I just remember being so exhausted during the Christmas holiday, looking for the child's favorite toy and not really having time to do a lot of the things that I would want to do. And so I made a promise to myself that after Thanksgiving, my workload would be light
Mm.
and that it would not pick up again until January after the new year. And I have pretty much held to that since the 1980s.
Love that.
And managing the expectations with any employer or client. These times are off limits. And now the girls are grown and gone, and I've been doing it. I was doing it for
You're
20.
still doing it. That's good.
Yes. And to also manage those expectations and set the expectations in the interviewing process.
Right from the get go.
Yes.
Take it or leave it.
Yes. And no one ever said no. It was yes and.
How about working late? Like long days, girls are young and in school. How did you navigate that? Did you ever feel guilt? Like, what did you do on those days?
I cannot tell you why I didn't feel guilt. I
I
just felt
love
like
that you didn't.
I just it's this is what we do. So I need to work late. Let me go get them from daycare or after school program and bring them back to the office and stop by their favorite hot dog or whatever place.
Make it
So
fun.
I'm not going to have time to cook and set them up in a corner of my office and do their homework and play their handheld video games. And then we go home. And so we get home, read the story. The routine is always the same. The youngest gets read her story first so that the oldest, feels like she was up a little longer, right? And that's how you make it happen. And having and being resourceful, having the contingency plans. Single moms, I don't care if you're not single mom. The best strategy for any successful life is having a contingency. You don't want to be planning in the midst of a crisis,
Right. So, what does that
right?
mean? Give me an example.
So the school calls and says, your daughter has a fever. You got to come get her.
Mm-hmm.
I'm about to walk into a board meeting,
Oh, man.
right?
I mean, and you had like back then, no virtual
No,
meetings.
no,
It's
no,
all really in person.
no.
Yeah.
The school's on line 3. um, and so, what was your plan? I mean, the scenarios are your child could get sick and need to be picked up, and who will you call?
So, what would you do in that situation when you're walking into a boardroom?
Well, I had a B and a C plan, and they knew they were my B or C plan. This wasn't, oh, let me see if my mother's available. My mother is a teacher. She works from this time to this time. So if it happens during the school day, I need another backup. I don't know if you know about this, but there were at this back in the day, a lot of hospitals had these programs where if your child was sick, you could bring them there instead of to the daycare and they would get the medical care that they needed.
Wow. Because
Yeah.
I still feel like there's no good answer to that. Like the babysitter you can call when your kids are sick, that's like nobody signs up and says that's me
And
that I
so
found.
that's again being resourceful, asking questions, talking to others. Well, I didn't know about this program until
Mm,
somebody told me.
mm.
It was at Kaiser. And I thought, wow, that's okay. That's a last resort if, plan A or plan B doesn't work. And this, when you think about it, also in your professional life, we're always, or we should always be planning for the outcomes, all of the possible outcomes, and not just the outcome that we want. Because when we do that, you're on your way into a boardroom and the school calls and says your child is sick, you need to have them picked up. No, this is a very important board meeting. Who are my backups? Hello, I have this really important meeting today. Are you going to be available in case something happens with the girls?
Sure. Yeah, having your work back up, not just your life back up. Yeah,
Yes.
that makes sense. So then the village, you had a strong one. You had a really strong and rich ecosystem. I'm hearing about mentors and a work ecosystem and those that you could lean on in your life. And it sounds like you also have, it's just a natural way for you. It was imprinted early, the idea of community and village, because it seems natural, your way of building it. It's a
You
weird era we're in now where, because of the pandemic and other things, I think social media, there's like a disconnect sometimes from having as big of a roster of an in-person world. I, what suggestions would you give to women? How do you actually create that? Any thoughts?
recruit, interview, and nurture. And you're always recruiting.
That's right. I am always recruiting babysitters. It's
You're
true.
all, I have a fabulous babysitter. She's wonderful. What's your backup?
Hmm.
Well, um, I'll just have to call my mother. Does your mother know she's a backup? Has she agreed to be the backup in all of these scenarios? Is she going to not go on her vacation cruise because your child has chickenpox? It's really about having that village, having those that community that can help. And Catherine, I I found out that there was this woman. This was before the internet and social media, and she would come to the office. She would come to your office, and she had all of the things to for a manicure pedicure. And I would close my office door because I didn't have time to go get a manicure pedicure.
I love it.
And I
Yes.
am taking calls. I'm working while I'm getting my manicure pedicure. Jewelry to your door. Every now and then, this woman, she jewelry to your door. That's was the name of her business. I remember my assistant says, let me set you up with I said, I'm looking for a cleaners. And I said, but I don't even have time to take my clothes to the cleaners because I really want to protect this time when I get home with the girls. So I can't be running here's a cleaners that delivers, they pick up from my house. They're bonded. They have a key to my home. I leave the clothes. They would come. And the same old Dennis, I miss Dennis already because he retired. But for more than 25 years, Dennis had a key to my house. And I would just call and say, hey, then he came every week. But then over the years, I didn't need him so much. And so there are still opportunities, even in this virtual world, to start thinking about what it is that is the most important that you need to do. And is there a resource that you can delegate this to? And yes, there's a financial impact on some of these services, but what's the impact of never being there? What's the impact of burnout? Because you're trying to do it all, have it all, and because of the guilt, you're just pushing yourself, pushing yourself.
True. True then, true now. Cheryl, I want to make sure we have time to talk about soft landings.
Yes, yes.
Tell me, and how this wove into the life that you had, the time when you were working mama.
It really started with a simple question. I was at a university speaking to public relations students, and one of the students asked, how is it like how is it that you were so successful? And I had to pause and think about it. And I said there are four things, and I had to write them down because no one had ever asked me the question in such a way that required me to be reflective. I said, when I think about any success that I've had, any time where I've been totally full of joy, I had a plan. The only thing worse than a bad plan is no plan. But not a plan that keeps you in a box. Remember, my plan was always to be the best public relations professional I could be. And it was never, well, I can't work in corporate America. There's a colleague, and her book is called Make Any Job Your Dream Job. I love the title of that book. I love what's in it, but I love the title of that book.
To just get it. Yeah.
Because when people say, oh, I hated my job in corporate America, why? Every corporate job I've ever had, I loved because it was entrepreneurial. It aligned with who I was. Remember that little girl who was
Yeah.
in pants? And so when you start thinking about, and you don't have a career plan, you fail to have options. And this life is about options and choices.
Especially when you're juggling. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes, the things.
The next is cabinet. Who is your personal cabinet? Who are the people around you, the resources, the individuals who can give you advice, who can serve as your sounding board.
I love that concept. Yeah.
Who are those people that are, some people say personal board of directors. I say
Mm.
it's a little more personal than that. These are your personal cabinet members. And sometimes they come and go based on where you are in your life, starting with the profile of the person that you need.
Mm.
I need someone in my life that's more organized than me. Okay, that might be it because I'm highly organized, or I need someone in my life who's more spontaneous.
I love this idea because when you say personal cabinet, there's a natural valuing of yourself and a natural sovereignty that you're granting. You are not at the whim and will of the rest of your life. You are,
Intentional.
yes,
Yes. And you're recruiting.
I love that.
You're always recruiting. Every time you meet someone, is this a person I want to bring in closer?
Mm.
Or is this someone who won't be in the personal cabinet, but maybe they are on the board of directors to give me some insights?
Mm.
Personal cabinet, community, being a part of a larger community, whether it's single moms who are in accounting. I don't know. For me, it was the Public Relations Society of America. It was the International Coaching Federation. It was the NAACP. There were organizations, and there was never just one. My sorority, Sigma Gamma Rho sorority, being very active there and being a part of that community. That keeps you curious. That helps you to be more resourceful by widening your community and your community involvement.
And when you're doing this, you're enabling soft landings no matter what comes in life.
Because it's choices. So if you have a plan and you hit a speed bump, then your cabinet steps in, right?
Mm.
You have a plan. You figured it out, right? And you've absolutely created this community that knows you and supports you. And so anytime I've hit a speed bump, I've pivoted probably within 30 days. If I lost a client, I had a new one.
Cheryl, we're about on our time, and this has just been so. You've got so much that hits home, and that is a powerful share for women in their careers, for mothers, and it's amazing that you were, you know, unlocking all of this in the 80s. It's just like, where's your book? Thank you. Okay, like,
I'm hopeful that we'll hear from the literary agent soon to talk about soft landings, because it's not that we're not going to fall, Catherine. It's
and
not
Soft
that we,
Landings is your book, just to clarify for the audience. It's the
yes,
book that's coming, right? Okay,
yes.
great. Yes. Thank
And
you.
so it's about that career. It's about the cabinet. It's about the community, and it's about always continuing to grow and learn, to be curious.
Okay,
Because
you
yes.
just
And do you see,
so
I'm sorry, but do you see how if you don't have one, it's like, oh, I've got my career, I've got my capabilities, I've got my community, but I didn't really have a plan. So then someone says, well, what do you want to do next? Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what I want to do next. Well, you're going to have to figure it out before somebody can help you figure that out, right? And so, again, it's not about the fact that we won't fall and that we won't encounter speed bumps along the way and that we're not emotional beings. Yes, we're going to have emotions. Our emotions are there to protect us. Sometimes it's protecting us from something that's not real, but then, we'll figure that out. But you want to be able to have that soft landing so that you can be resilient, pick yourself up after you've had a bad day, and reach out to those who can help lift you up and remind you of all of the wonderful things you've done in life, and that this is just a little speed bump.
Thank you, Cheryl. You are a magical being who is obviously constantly resonating with other magical opportunities and other wonderful people. And I'm just so grateful for your example. And I have to say, as a mother who's in the throes of the young versions of it, it's so deeply important to get to talk to women like you who are in the anti phase, who can share wisdom with us who are in the throes of it and give insight to the perspectives that really carried your life to a place that felt hearing it sounds so rich and meaningful. So thank you so much for sharing, because gosh, it's so important to us to have people like you who can be an example for how things can be.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to share my story and to just be a part of this podcast that can be a thought starter for others who are just struggling with how to keep it all together.
Wonderful. Well, everyone, that's a wrap. And we will be linking to Cheryl in the ways that this is shared and posted, so you can definitely find her. And Cheryl, is there a website where anyone can find you to connect or learn more?
Sure, CherylProcter-Rogers.com, or they can email me at Cheryl@CherylProcter-Rogers.com.
Wonderful. Thank you again, Cheryl, and everyone. That's a wrap today. Take care and see you next time. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Expanders Podcast, presented by The Skinny Platform. You can catch more episodes and be notified of newly released episodes by following us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or subscribing on YouTube. For more information on the Expanders Podcast and The Skinny Platform, visit our website, www.theskinnyplatform.com.